I've got two or three different verticals that I'm working on, and my company acts as an umbrella company throughout that. And it's been a pretty fun journey from that. Very hard journey, but pretty fun.
Sure. So, Naman, one quick thing about high school students, and you started off in middle school. What is it that you've seen has changed in the way people participate in competitive coding and do something with it in terms of their future? How do they get recognized, and what can they do next to build their profile, not just for college, but to attract good internship sort of supervisors to notice that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think one of the biggest things that has happened is back then, uh, no one was really doing this, and in this day and age, it's pretty much become commercialized because my journey is something similar to what a pretty genius guy is imitating recently and selling as a startup, and he's been on the news a lot, White Hat Junior. Now, when you've got such companies in the mix trying to give or sell a shortcut out of all of these things, then the most important things become that you have to separate yourself in some way and always trying to do what others are not doing or something that interests you or relates to you the most.
Great. So over to you, Sanchit. Tell us about how did you get interested in code, and what was your journey, and what's offered at King's which you found unique to forego other options in other countries and study in the UK.
So I actually don't remember how I got started. Just sort of happened, but I've been programming since I was in 11th grade. Um, and I came to King's mostly because they had like a very attractive offer for me. I could do computer science at King's and I could do management at LSE, and it was something that I could not pass up. Uh, King's is actually not a great school to do computer science in. To be honest, it's got very good curriculum, but at the same time, it's very theoretical. There's not a lot of practical knowledge that you can get. But the King's Business School and the King's Entrepreneurship Institute is one of the best institutes in the entirety of UK. It's amazing. There's a lot of connections, networks, and resources that can provide you with, and that was something that I just could not pass up. So that was one of the reasons that I joined King's. And for the past 4 years, I've been trying to make use of those resources as much as I can. So at the moment, I've just finished my placement year, which was as a tech consultant at Ernst& Young. And since then, I've pivoted to doing technology consulting and design consulting. So using human-computer interaction, it's a very small subset of computer science that you'll probably find when you join university. So that's what I do now. And thankfully, with the help of King's, I'm part of an accelerator program that is focusing on an initiative that I started with under Arjun, actually, like a couple of years ago, like Covell. That's somehow still going on. So here we are.
It's great. Awesome. So, Arnav, over to you. How's it been settling in into a virtual college? And do you get a sense of the passion that you and Jerome Fisher has to bring? And what have you learned so far in your experience?
Right. Yeah, sure. So it's definitely been different settling into college. This is obviously not what I expected. But at the same time, I think the academic and social experience has adapted rather well to the virtual environment. So we have this class called OIDD 399, and it's just alumni from the M&T program coming in and talking about their experiences. So just being around talented people and listening to their stories. So for instance, a couple of days ago, we had the global head of Goldman Sachs come in. And before that, we had an entrepreneur who was on Forbes top 30 on the 30 list. So it's a great place to get an interesting variety of ideas and perspectives. And at the same time, I think you have a lot of opportunities available on campus. So with stuff like you have like entrepreneurship challenges, and like just a couple of days ago, someone reached out to me about how they wanted to start something, and I have a call with them on Monday. But just a plethora of opportunities, and it's really what you can make of it.
Great. I think what's common in all your answers is that you have tech and entrepreneurship sort of meshed together. Naman is a living example. He is an entrepreneur, has been for a while now. Um, Sanchit is part of a Kickstarter, which is accelerator program, and you being at Jerome Fisher. But let's zoom out a little bit and say, okay, if a student really wants to understand different tracks of computer science, it could be, data sciences, machine learning, AI, web dev, app dev, other kind of embedded systems and robotics and so on and so forth. What do you think you got interested in? Arnav, I'll go in the reverse order now. And how did you start in the middle school and high school years to sort of distill and sort of figure out what you would want to do more?
Right. So I got started off with computer science in really basic scripting languages. So I started off with like stuff like JavaScript and Python, and just going from there to, I think the first time I actually used computer science was with an NGO, was with Goonj. So just helping them automate some of their tasks about web scraping, and then going on to actually helping out you with web scraping. So that's how I got interested in computer science. But I think it really took off when I understood the applications of it. So the way you can use computer science to build stuff and to create new applications and projects, that's the side that I'm really interested on. I know that data science is a really upcoming field right now. Data science degrees are definitely great in the market right now. But for me, it's more about using computer science and meshing it together with entrepreneurship.
Fantastic. And yeah, thanks for talking about that. The project was really interesting. What I'd given Arnav to do was to scrape data from LinkedIn of all our alumni, including Namanai's and Sanchit's. So we ran a code. It's all public information. You guys put it out there. So Arnav was the guy who just scraped it off. But it's fun. I think it's simple projects. But imagine if I had to get one or two members of my team to copy paste each page from LinkedIn. And LinkedIn doesn't make it easy, by the way. So because it sort of stops you from doing it after a while. Anyways, so over to you, Sanchit now. Like I said, there are different fields in computer science. People, they talk about blockchain and crypto and machine learning and AI and all web dev, app dev, virtual reality and all that, augmented reality, mixed reality. It's all kind of mixing up.
Yeah.
Where are your passions? What do you see that you want to move toward?
So I had like a very unique experience, which was, so I did 2 years of computer science. I went out for my placement year as a tech consultant, and I ended up not using any tech at all during my entire year, which was very surprising to me and very weird because it was part of my job description. That's what the interview entailed. But during my year, I had the opportunity to explore different areas of not just computer science, but like technology in general. So I was working with technology implementation and service redesign. I think that was like the biggest part of my time there. So it wasn't just like, how do humans interact with computers? It was, if the entire service is one massive machine, how do the people generally interact with a corporate department? And then it was like designing the entire thing with tech implementation. So it was a very weird aspect that gave me a lot of perspective in general.
Okay, so at tech consulting like E&Y, you would probably be working with so many tech teams, and each technology team could have a product manager and so on and so forth. So typically, what do you see is the role of, or what is the hierarchy of tech teams like in a large corporation, and what is the product manager's job?
So all consultancies, they operate on the same hierarchy, which is when you join as an intern, you are a consultant. And above the consultant is a graduate consultant, someone who's joined a graduate scheme. Above that is a senior consultant, then a manager, senior manager, then a director, then I think a vice director, and then like a partner. It's a very big hierarchy, and you have to be at the company for a really long time to make your way up the ladder, which was not appealing to me at all at the moment. But it's quite weird because the tech consultancy teams, they're also quite similar to like business consultancy teams. There's only 2 or 3 people who are proficient with technology and just programming in general. I think throughout my entire time there, I might have met like 4 different people throughout the entire year who did actually know programming. everyone else was just a business consultant and helping with like selling stuff and engagements and other stuff like that.
Awesome. So, Namana, I know you work with so many clients. You have your own consulting outfit, and so it's something unique here. You're at the top of the pile, which Sanchit is sort of moving towards, and now interested in also starting something of his own. How is it like to be an entrepreneur with clients like us? You know, you've got an interesting project going on with Namana's company. Initially it was just a social media campaign and trying to be more effective with our college fairs that we do, but it's turning out to become an even bigger and more interesting project with data science and many other things involved. So, what do you think is a product manager's job if we were to hire a CTO or even outsource a CTO from your company? What would that person bring to the table?
Uh, so that's a really good question, because I think when you begin, you start looking at things at more of a theoretical level. But when you start making business products out of code, and you start delivering actual business value with code, and start saving XYZ dollars per day, or creating XYZ dollars per day, then you genuinely start seeing code and everything as a very different entity than what you originally thought. And what a good CTO or anyone who's interested in doing product dev, uh, which is what all the companies desire. Like if you were a person working at Google and you were given a job to create an entirely new Google product, so the person's job really there is to deeply understand what the customer or the audience wants, and to deeply understand what the clients or the business technology can deliver. For example, if we look at the perspective of Google, they've got a bunch of technologies, tools, and a team of engineers and designers. And now, if anyone wants to make a new product under there, they have to deeply think what the audience has want based on their existing analytics, based on their experience, etc. And then once a product is made, it's extremely crucial to pivot and to keep improving, to keep learning from your users, and to keep making changes that make it better and better, which is something we all see. And for example, Zomato is a pretty good example of that. It has had some very crazy iteration in the past few months, and it keeps improving itself. Example, with regards to the COVID crisis, it made some very good improvements. Yeah.
Okay, super. So, you know what? I'm going to also segue and get the audience. It's a small group, so we do want you to answer a few questions as well as ask questions. Um, so, number one, how many of you, if you were to say, not how many, rather, if you say that you're interested in web dev and app dev, you can just say yes in the chat feature. That'll be useful for us to know how many of you are interested in web dev and app dev. Just say I am or yes or whatever. So please use the chat. Okay, we're getting some answers in. I am. Okay, Raman Parth, Nishchay Ranjan. Okay, cool. I think quite a few.
Very nice.
Okay, and then Tharia has a question for Namana, which we'll come to. My another sort of question is, how many of you would want to also pursue data science, machine learning, AI? If you are, you can just say, I'm interested again. Okay, so there are a few overlaps as well. So I think the point I'm trying to make is it sort of merges. And given the use case I'm working with on Namana, I just see that the kind of data that we get, though it's a web dev, app dev project that we are trying to do for our services and making my time more readily available for students and try to make a product out of counseling. Uh, it is a data science problem.
Yeah.
And then a lot of it does overlap. So you can't just be someone who's good at pretty websites. Okay, great. Now I'll get to more questions later, but let's hear you, Dhairya. Please switch on your mic and ask your question.
So like I said, my question is for Namadya. So you said that you started creating websites when you were in seventh grade. So can you please tell us what kind of website you made, or can you give us the link for the website so I can have a look on what kind of website it was? And
Yeah. So if you search up my name and then you go on archive.is, you can check out the entire history of how and when I coded it. And there's also a lot of my work is I was participating in hackathons with a part of the team for my school. And we had competitions in web design and development, pretty similar to some hackathons in school that you might have done, almost approximately 15 to 20 a year. And the environment there was that you were given a task, for example, create a website for a banking startup, and you had a time frame of 3 hours, and you had to work with a teammate to do it. So that was a lot of my experience. You will find my site Namanyaji, and you can go on archive is. And if you do that enough, you'll even find many of my clients that I worked with in back when I was in ninth and 10th. And yeah, if you know how to use archives, you'll have a good time.
all right,
Awesome.
thank
Hey,
you.
that's a good question, Dharya, and it actually reminded me of a video that I saw recently of a Gurgaon boy. He's now supposedly a tech whiz in the valley. His name is Ivan Luthra. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. Navane, maybe it rings a bell.
Yeah.
He's all over YouTube, and if you look him up, he talks about how Steve Jobs mentored him, but Steve Jobs was actually dead by the time he sort of claimed that he mentored him. So it's great, but Namana is legit for sure. There are all kinds of people out there who
I actually
claim,
I
yeah,
actually worked with Ivan on a blockchain related project 2 years ago, and what he did was pretty impressive because
okay,
he had funds to channel, but even after a time now, at this point, he genuinely commissions tech products and get them done. Not to say that he understands any of the programming or anything, but he
he
does
has the
deliver a
ideas.
product,
Yeah.
and he has an audience that pays for it. So
That's great. That's another thing. Like you don't have to be the person who codes, who can sort
yeah,
of
yeah.
get people to code too is fine. Now, my question to you, Arnav, is that what is original code, right? And in today's day and age, I mean, these are libraries you just pick up and things. So it's like writing a extended essay or a research paper and acknowledging someone's work. Is that it, or you really need to worry about how you sort of assemble code for a project?
Right. So I would say it depends on what libraries you're using and where you're taking them from. So generally with open source code, simply citing the user according to like the way the license under which it has been published is okay. For code taken from other libraries, it's really it depends on the kind of contract you have with the person and or the entity and how you structure that. But essentially, whatever you've not written, it's a good idea to cite whatever is not yours.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So you know what I'm going to do now? We have a few videos we recorded, and I know this might bore the panelists a little bit, but these are I'm going to play a few clips of our students who are product managers or are entrepreneurs, and people who've set very big companies, including almost an India's unicorn stage company. So I'll be sharing my screen, and I'll just play random 1 minute videos of people I've known for over the years. It's uh, it's interesting that we can. So the first video I'm playing is of the student. His name is Raghav, and he's graduating from UC Berkeley Electrical Engineering. And he's going to be talking about how he sort of chose his major because he didn't go really decided and then finally sort
Okay,
of.
so I came in, my story to Berkeley was a little unique. And I'll just like mention this so that everyone can hear as well. I didn't start Berkeley as electrical engineering and computer science. I actually got in as engineering undeclared, as you know. And that was interesting because I was at a point, when I was graduating high school, I wasn't really sure what kind of engineering I really wanted to do. Did I want to go into tech? Did I want to do some sort of like mechanical engineering, or did I want to do industrial engineering? I was very unsure about that. But what I did know was that I like using science and math to try and solve problems and like real world problems. And that sort of led me to engineering. I think personally for me, the difference was just the way things are taught. I think, growing up in India, it's been very much a type of situation where the teachers are like constantly holding you accountable, but you have to make that transition really quick where you need to start holding yourself accountable to be able to.
Okay, so I just wanted to share just this part and about the journey of eventually choosing. So you don't necessarily have to go decided into college. Uh, like even Sanchit moving from tech, but now enjoying a lot more of the business side. It's all going to happen for you as well. And as far as Namana, he just knew he wanted to be an entrepreneur, so it was a very different journey for him as well. So I think each one to their own. The other thing I liked about his interview later on, I'm playing a second clip from Raghav here, and he's going to talk about product management and he's going to explain it a little bit more.
Right. This took me like a while to understand because if you Google product management, you get like 20 different definitions of it. The way I like to think of it is as a Venn diagram. And if one circle is engineering and the other circle is non-technical roles, right? Like for someone who's like a designer or a business development associate or sales or marketing, a product manager will sit at like the intersection where these two circles overlap and work with all these different like cross-functional teams to really drive the vision for a product.
Okay, so the reason I wanted to bring this up was very often the most coveted jobs right after campus are product managers, and you land up with jobs. I don't even want to kind of name the price tag that you have. It could be over $200,000 as well if you're really brilliant at any of the top FANG companies. But more than the money, I think it's the responsibility and doing things. Last piece I'm going to play with Raghav's advice on what high school students could be doing to prepare for college. Here it is.
Absolutely. I think like I have like a couple things. I think first I would just start off by just saying, don't stress out about it. And this sounds cliche, but trust the process. I know like all the people who have like a dream school. I had a dream school. For me, it was Stanford, and I was rejected. But I am now at Berkeley, and what I've learned through my time here is it really doesn't matter where you end up. What matters like 100 times more than that is what you end up doing with your time at college or at university, and just making the most of wherever you are. And if you just do that, like you'll be set up for success for the rest of your life. Like that's something that I've had a big realization like after my first year here, is that it literally doesn't matter where you go. And I think in terms of like essay writing, just being yourself.
Okay, so we'll talk about essay writing and all that in a different session, but yeah, I just thought I'll play this. So there are many videos like this. During the pandemic, I spent my time recording interviews and catching up with students who are now friends. And it's a passion project for me. So I'll share the link here, and you can all Google and find it, or go to our website also. And there's a section called videos.edbrand.com, and watch a few of these. There's one more which of another student that I really wanted to play back. But before I do that, I'd go back to questions and stop sharing my screen. From the life advice that you would want to give the young audience here, what is it that you feel has worked for you in terms of your work ethic or working with people, collaborating? Being a coder is not a solitary sort of role. You have to communicate with your clients or prospective sort of clients too, or even your team members who might be in different locations in different parts of the world, especially now. Arnav, would you want to start? Like, I know during high school you were on a project too, which had people in different locations and different things. What would you give as advice to students who are thinking of jumping into a career which requires all of these skills and not just coding?
Right. So I would generally say follow whatever you like doing. I think people tend to overcomplicate the process where they have a goal in mind and they're trying to do XYZ steps for it. Instead, I would just go with your intuition and see where that takes you. generally saying yes to a lot of experiences is something that has worked for me. So, interviewing for jobs that you're not qualified for, I think that's a great way to learn about an industry that you don't know anything about. So just sitting there, talking to people and saying yes to experiences, that opens you up to an entirely new world of information and perspective.
Great. Namane, in your career so far, what do you think has been the biggest learning, and what are the skills you feel you should have learned earlier, or things that you're still working on?
Um, so uh, one of the things I had to learn at a very young age was that to really get to a level where you need to, you have to have a good mindset and a good schedule of work. Like you should have a fixed schedule where you're putting a regular number of hours towards a goal. And secondly, the a type of mindset that really helps is that you have to genuinely always shoot to become number one in any particular field. It can be anything. It can be the number one Arduino programmer in your school. It can be the number one Python coder, anything you want, but you genuinely have to keep a mindset for number one or nothing else. And then even if you fail, at least you'll have learned a lot. But it's about the mindset and it's about the schedule, because a lot of time people start engaging in projects. For example, they'll start doing an Arduino project, and a few weeks later they'll just drop it and they just skip it, and citing busy schedule, etc. So that's something one should never do. You should have goal oriented thinking and pick different things to do. And one of the questions was, were you guys always short? And I think that's a good question. So uh, when I started, I explored many different things. I was very curious about computers, and I did everything from graphic design to audio design to Python programming. And after exploring everything, I figured out that web development is something that I'm most interested in currently. And even now, I keep changing what I'm most interested in. And now I would say that I'm more interested in backend programming and data science. So the point is to always keep exploring and figuring out new things. And you do not have to box yourself into a particular role or a job. That's for insects. We're human beings and we can do multiple things and we can have multiple goals. And just pick one thing, try to give your best at it. If you like it, then go do it more. If you don't like it, then skip and try out the next thing you're seeing that you might be interested in. And I have a call in a few minutes, so I'll leave now if that's okay, Arjun.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Namane, and look forward to catching up on our project soon. So all the best again.
And this was
Bye.
really, I hope you guys learned something from all this and try to do something better and try to achieve something more. Thank you. Bye.
I will share your website link, etc. Everyone can check it out too, so that'll be super. Okay, thanks, Namane. Bye. Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen because there are two more videos or a few more videos that I feel will be useful for this audience. And this one is a student again at UPenn. It'll be fun to share this. So he talks about, this is Dhruvad Bhardwaj. He's graduated. He's working in tech. I asked him a question like, who is someone who can be good at computer science, and
I think from there it's just if you like solving problems, and if you don't only like solving problems in a way that is just like, okay, this works, I'm done, but how can I make this work better? Is there a cleaner way to do this? I think computer science is really well suited for those kind of people. In terms of the possibilities, they're really endless. I think in every career choice at the moment, there is some aspect where computer science or computer engineering is involved. On the spectrum, I would say on one end, there's what I would call computer engineering, where you're really working, with the hardware, the networks, how does information in ones and zeros in as electrical currents really spread information across the world. So, your data centers, your network engineering, your cloud, all of this kind of stuff. And then moving up the what they call the stack, you have more higher level concepts around machine learning, AI, data science. Like, what are the gleaning insights from large volumes of data, like the statistical aspects around it? And you really kind of pick somewhere on the spectrum. I think in one thing you do a lot in college is you take on a lot of projects.
And sometimes you just find yourself gravitating towards some projects versus others. I never really loved the low end or the um, that low level, more infrastructure related projects. I like the more higher level stuff.
So, yeah, so, this was just one of the clips I wanted to show. And there's one more, which Drupad talks about his internships and his struggles for finding good internships over a period of time. So here it
As a
is.
junior, and I was looking for an internship. As an Indian citizen in the US, you're always cognizant of the immigration ramifications of your internships. So I didn't want to burn the OPT time, so the time I get to work on my visa on internship. So I didn't start looking in the US until my junior year. And I tried really hard. I was really interested in this scheme at Google. I interviewed. I thought I had it, and then I didn't get it. And it was extremely disheartening. And I think that's part of the parcel, that you get rejected, and you sort of have to dust yourself off and get up and get back onto the horse and say, that will happen. Turns out that actually, when I was flying back to India, and that morning I was about to accept the only offer that I had, Google called me back and said, "Hey, actually, we changed our mind. We'd like you to come intern with us." So, and this also happens. So you just have to be, keep your chin up, your head up. And I think that's what I've always told students who are like, "Oh, this is being difficult," or "I'm not getting any bites." And they're like, just keep trying. Trust me.
Yeah, so I think this is a very important point where life will not always present you roses. And I think all our students I've been interviewing have said it's never been just a smooth sailing. So Arnav, I know you just entered college, and it's something that you would have heard so much from your seniors who are who are pursuing great internships, etc. How pre-professionally are you oriented yourself? Do you have your heart set out? Being at UPenn, Wharton, Jerome Fisher, all of those things sound as if you should have a life plan to become the next president of the US or something. What is it that you're planning? Is it one day at a time, or you have a plan?
Right. So the school in general tends to be pre-professional. So I've heard stories about people walking around in their suits to class and then going for an internship or something. But I wouldn't say I'm like that. I don't have a career plan in mind, and I'm not too much on the tech side nor on like the business side. So probably going to do something like VC or product management. But that's what I'm thinking of currently. But it keeps changing, and just hoping that it works out.
Awesome. Sanchit, yeah, good to see you too. And, we were talking about all kinds of journeys people have had, and some words of inspiration you would like to share, things that did not work out for you, and the lessons that you learned. What would you want to share as life advice?
So when I was applying for my placement year, I applied to 65 places and I only got one offer back. So it was very disheartening to see. And EY was the last offer I had. So it was literally my last hope. And they called me back. They were like, "Oh yeah, we'd love to have you." And during that time period, I realized, uh, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. You really need to network every day and just meet new people, especially in your freshman year. Like, don't be afraid to meet people from different departments, especially people who are not doing computer science. Like, there's a very good chance, like 4 years from now, you're going to need a job or an internship or a connection, and they would have what you asked for. So, like, just make a name for yourself, meet as many people as you possibly can, because that's what I did during my interview. It was surprisingly because of networking that I got the job for EY. I met one of the HR managers who was going to be making the decision while I was doing my interview downstairs, grabbing a coffee, and we just had a conversation. And she was the one that made the decision for me. So, just like meet as many people as you can, and just don't be disheartened if you don't get that internship. It's probably going to work out very well in the end.
Great. I think I love that story where you applied for more than 60 places for internships. And we've seen students do that all the time. I think it's the resilience that you need to have, and have the faith that it'll work out. I'm going to again share my screen on this point of using resources on campuses. There's a fantastic clip of a student who not only did his undergrad in CS at Georgia Tech, but also did his master's and is now working at the JP Morgan's AI lab facility in Midtown Manhattan. Apparently, the bank has now become a tech company in a pretty big way. So here's one clip which I'm gonna just pull out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this one. So this is more about path to choosing his major at Georgia Tech. So let's hear this one.
So as soon as I got there, I was a part of a living learning community. So it's called the Grand Challenges program, and it's why it's living learning is because it's 110 students who all live in the same dorm, and you're also taking a lot of classes together, and it's about this particular research aspect called the Grand Challenges program, where you're trying to come up with solutions to solve humanity's grand challenges. So because of this living learning community, it was really easy to make friends and connections in the early days. And coming to the US from India, it was great to have a support system.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's important because you can choose when you go to college to sign up for such living learning communities or even sororities and fraternities which have a purpose. And if you find like-minded people, you can sort of get a head start because these are people who are in their fourth year, almost graduating, or even alumni connections become a lot more forthcoming if you immediately start networking and getting to know and immersing yourself in these activities. The second thing, Srijan Sood, he's graduated, he was talking to me about was generally about CS and internships again. So this clip is going to be useful
I'd
for
say
people
that
looking for
most of
internships.
my personal growth during my college years actually happened in the summers that I was interning. Right? Like after each summer, I could really look back and see how I've grown in multiple ways. And my first internship was in San Diego at Qualcomm, which is a chip manufacturing and a chip design company. And back then, my freshman year, I was actually a computer engineering major. So, it's a mix between electrical engineering and computer science because I was still pretty indecisive about, what I kind of want to do. I know I like computer science, I like coding, but I also like the hardware aspect, right? So it was always this back and forth between which classes to take. So I just picked a major that would let me do both. But then during my first internship, I actually realized that the hardware aspect was more of a hobby. Like I love to do some of that stuff and I still continue to do that, but studying it wasn't really.
Yeah, so again, you will find your path, you will figure out things as you go along. Then he goes on to explain a few more things which I felt were relevant. So again,
The computing requirement is there for all engineering or science majors, but just the tool, the language that you study it will change. So all engineering majors take a class in MATLAB, whereas the CF majors take a class in Python. So, everyone is kind of introduced to the world of computing. But after that, the computer science majors have multiple streams. So you were mentioning topics like, Internet of Things, machine learning, systems, databases, and these are called threads in the Georgia Tech curriculum. So overall, the undergraduate department offers 8 threads, and to graduate, you end up picking 2 threads. Right? So that kind of allows you to cater your computer science degree to whichever aspect you like the most. Right? So there are a lot of people that like the web aspect, the app dev aspect. There's a complete pillar for that, right? So everyone has the same 4 classes. So of course, everyone studies things like introduction to programming, data structures and algorithms, advanced algorithms, databases. But after that, what you choose to specialize in is completely up to you.
Okay, great. So I think it's an important thing to also know that what your curriculum would be like. Very often students apply to colleges without really doing research or looking at course catalogs. Of course, you should know what you're going to be studying, but yeah, tips from students, it just saves you time to watch some of these interviews. I'll make them available to you after this. Leave it in the chat feature. One last thing which he did mention, and I want to play that again, not again, but here, his kind of how he feels education has changed or is pivoting, higher ed is changing because of COVID.
My undergrad career was my internships that kind of guided me towards, what specific niche I wanted to pursue, and into realizing that research is something I'm really passionate about. So, my first internship, which was software engineering, leading on to more of a data engineering role, followed by a machine learning internship. That kind of made me realize that, okay, machine learning is something I'm passionate about. And that's why in late junior year, I ended up opting for the thesis option. So the computer science program at Georgia Tech gives you multiple options for your capstone. And the traditional option is that you work with a company, and it's a 2-semester project where you're paired with different students in your cohort, and then you try solving this problem for this company. I opted for the thesis route, where I worked with a faculty member over the course of 3 semesters to work on a specific problem, and then I have to write a thesis.
So yeah, this is again an interesting track. Some students choose to go into industry, some go into academia, and then finally into industry. So this is one thing that he mentioned, which was useful. And last, that's the clip I really wanted to play before this. So it's that topic, how higher education, COVID, digitization is actually playing out.
These are very interesting questions, and while I'm nowhere of an expert on policy or any of these things, just some things I realized are, viewing. I think we have to view these non-traditional aspects in a very different light. That they're not second tier in any way. I think sometimes we have this vision of whatever's traditional, whatever is normal is the way to go. But we have to see how these things can add value. For example, one of the things that I saw was off-campus or online students were really adding value to the degrees of the on-campus students. Right? So one thing that you take for granted when you're on campus is interaction. Right? So a lot of students study in groups, right? And it could be a group of 2, 3, or it could be just study groups of 10 people. But having said that, there's also people who prefer to just work alone. And there are a lot of these online forums or discussion portals. I think the major company that does this is called Piazza. And most colleges that I know of have Piazza for their classes. And it's basically an online forum where students can ask questions and they can answer other students' questions, or you wait for a professor or a teaching assistant to answer your question. And these can be actual technical questions or just more logistic things about the logistical aspects of the class. But these forums tend to die down rather quickly on some of the on-campus classes, right? Because some of the reasons could be that people who need this information are already working in study groups, right? They already have it covered.
So what he actually pointed out was during this COVID era, the forums became a lot more active, and since people were in a hybrid mode, few on campus, few at home, it's just a lot more of the engagement became virtual, and these things became a lot more popular. So I just wanted to share this with you. But going back to participation from the audience, I'm going to open the floor to anyone who wants to ask questions, be it about studying abroad or applying or figuring out careers and opportunities. Feel free. I think we have another 5-10 minutes and we can wrap things up after that. You can type your question or just unmute and ask. So there's one question that's come in, Akhilesh. Can you please share your email ID? Okay, fine. That's it. It's not a question, it's a request. So fine, I'll do that. Fine. He has some issues about academics. I mean, not just, it's a general question. Akhilesh, though I'm naming you, it's not about shaming you. I think very often we feel that our grades are suboptimal and we can't get into top colleges or so and so forth. But again, it's relative. We feel it's bad, but because we think our peers have done so well. But in the scheme of things, this question to you, Sanchit, first. What do you feel? High school academics, should it be something that you should be judged by, and or when you find your college, the right experience is what matters?
I don't think you should be judged by academics. Like my high school 11th grade was horrible. I think I was at like a 62. And then I think my 12th boards were 85 or something. But I had a conditional from King's, which was 80. So I think I did okay in that regard. But in university now, my academics are horrible at the moment as well. Like, because I've spent so much of my time doing just entrepreneurship work and a lot of business stuff as well. and just, networking. There's a lot of events to go to. There's a lot of people to meet. And plus the placement year and applying to that, it's a lot of effort and your academics are going to suffer at some point. But here in the UK, the first 2 years, you can afford to not do anything because the way it's set up is I think it's 1 to 4 to 5. So your first year only accounts for 9% of your entire degree. And your second year accounts for like 40% and the rest like 50. So first 2 years, it's probably fine. You can bungle them up. Third year is when you have to get serious because that's when you have to write your dissertation in the UK. And they are not very easy going about your dissertations. It has to be a project that goes on throughout the entire year, and you have to do it yourself. For a lot of people who've not done like placement years or internships, it's the first project that they will own by themselves and the first project that they have complete control over. So it's up to them. And for a lot of people, it can be very scary because they'll read the research and be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go with this.
Hey, thanks for sharing this because it's so important to know that there is a journey and everyone sort of finds a peak. Sometimes when you peak in high school, you can pretty much the only place you can go is down. So yeah, pace yourself, but be mindful about your responsibilities. Arnav, I think the few questions have come for you. It's more to do with when did you start learning to code? What are the extracurriculars that are really important to say get into college? Yeah, okay, let's start with that for you, Arnav.
Right. So when did I start to learn to code? I think I took like an online course in about like 6th grade, and I didn't understand any of it, so I left it. But then I did this competition called Google Code In, and like I don't, it recently got discontinued, but it was essentially this online competition where they give you small tasks and you expected to complete them in 3 days. So given that kind of a setup, I just figured stuff out by myself at that point. And yeah, I think that was interesting because code is not something that you need to learn per se, especially if you're just doing like code, if you're just coding instead of like actual computer science where you're learning the maths behind it and time efficiency and stuff like that. So that's how I learned to code, particularly. That's what I would say. Then about the second question about extracurriculars, uh, so I would say that you should just explore a variety of like fields and activities that you can do. Anything that interests you would be a nice extracurricular. But one particular advice that I would give is that you should choose something and really focus on it instead of trying to do like 1,000 things in 1,000 different areas. If you just choose one thing and try to advance that, that might come off better in your applications, and that might even be more interesting to you.
Great. There's one interesting question. It's about finding the balance. Like, how do you balance your schedule? So it's like a productivity hack question. And I know Arnav and I, we share this conversation about productivity books, self improvement sort of books. So I'm sure your list is longer than mine now. There are interesting things. So Sanchit, for you first, since you've got more experience of balancing life at college, and like you said, the first year was just kind of fun in a way. That's what I heard.
One thing I realized during my first year was I should not come home if I have work to do. So I would just leave my house at 9 for like lectures and tutorials and stuff, and I will not come home until like 11 p.m. because the moment I come home, I'm gonna either sleep or watch TV and do nothing about it the entire day. So even when I was working, I used to get out and just stay out until like 11 p.m., get all my work done, come back home, and then just sleep. I think like past 3 years, the only time I've been in my house is just to sleep and nothing else. That's how I manage my time. But in terms of like societies and stuff, usually your extracurriculars are going to be in the evenings, and a lot of them are going to have socials in the evenings as well. So it's up to you to go out to those socials and wake up in time for your lectures and your academics the next morning. If you can manage it, or well and good. If you can't, well, in the UK, they don't really take attendance for lectures anyway, so I think you're good.
All right, so that's the easy way out, but not in the US. I believe there's a lot more accountability there from year one too. So again, same question to you, Arnav, productivity hacks. How do you balance this and then other extracurriculars along with your CS project profiles? A typical high school student who's interested in CS would want a GitHub account, competitive programming competitions and hackathons and projects and internships, uh, plus other extracurriculars if they have community service initiative or leadership role to play. What has worked for you during high school and now in college?
Right. I know that you have like several productivity tools and stuff like that. I know you have several ways of taking notes, and a lot of people do that. And you can definitely explore that. That works for some people. But for me, it's just more or less been ranking stuff in priority and then getting it done according to that order. So if something's like due tomorrow, obviously, and I have like several tasks to do, that's the first thing that I'll start on. But just understanding what's important to you and working on that first, because I think I have a general concept of thinking that if you want to do something, you'll probably have the time for it. So just taking on stuff that you're really passionate about, because that in turn translates to you being committed to it and finding the time for it.
Great. So I think there are a few more questions in general about when did you guys decide that you wanted to study abroad? And I think if you were to extend that question a little bit, what do you think you value more about it since you're now in the thick of it, either through online hybrid and in your fourth year? So Sanchit, would you want to take this question? When did you decide that you wanted to study abroad, and do you think it was the right decision? What did you really learn?
So I think I was in like 8th grade when I decided I wanted to study abroad. I was still in like boarding school in India, and I'd seen a lot of my seniors just give their exams and set off to study abroad, and it kind of made me want to do the same as well. Plus, my parents, they both studied abroad, so it was kind of like their decision as well. Uh, Being in London has forced me to grow in ways that I did not expect. In London, you don't generally have a very massive support system. You live in halls, but at the same time, there's no campus. There is no one unified area that everyone can go and meet. You don't know where everyone's coming from or what they're studying. So you have to make an effort to build a social circle and a support bubble for yourself, especially when after the first years, you can't live in halls anymore. So when, for example, I live alone now, so I have to make an even more conscious effort to build a social bubble now, because especially with the pandemic and everything, being alone all the time just sort of sucks. So yeah, just being out and about, just being social and, being mindful of other people.
Great. I think these are great tips. Arnav, your experience is obviously a bit different given that you've just started in a hybrid mode. But when did you think of studying in the US as your option? And what is it really like now?
Right. So I think I took that decision about like in my 11th or 10th grade, leaning towards like when 11th ended. So for me, it was more about exposure and like learning an interdisciplinary, having an interdisciplinary form of education. So I think in most countries like the India or like Singapore or something, it's really depth over breadth. And I wanted to expand what I'm learning. So I didn't want to focus on one particular thing. I didn't have a clear idea in mind. And the US was just the only place that allowed me to do that. So that's why I took that call.
Hey, great. So, this is time to wrap up things. We are pretty much on dot. I'm going to leave my details here for students who are watching, and feel free to email me, or if you have further questions for Arnav, Sanchit, or Namanay, you can always email me and I can direct them to you. So thank you, Arnav, and thank you, Sanchit, for being here. Look forward to many more such sessions and inviting you to those too in the future. We do have an alum mixer coming up, and I'll send you more details about that. It's lining up to be a pretty good event. So thank you again. Bye.
Thank you.